Hello everyone. Today's intro video is about the Bernina 530. So I'm going to go over how it works and the main components that you need to be concerned about. First and foremost, we want to make sure it has a power source. So on the right side of your machine, there should be a power cord plugged in, and that power cord should obviously be plugged into some kind of power source. And the second part you want to be concerned about is to make sure that you have your pedal connected to the machine. And this here is your pedal, and this is basically, you know, like driving a car. This is how you make the machine go. So first of all, just make sure it's plugged in. And then second of all, on the right side of your machine, you will have an on-off button. You should generally know if you've turned it on, if you hear some kind of noise and you see something on the screen. And there will usually be a light here. Sometimes the lights go out and the light bulb needs to be replaced, but for the most part, this is what the on machine should look like. So let's talk about the next basic feature. So the second part that we want to focus on is having the necessary parts to the machine. So your thread will be inserted in the machine in two different places. So this is the bottom part of the machine, and this here is just called a bobbin. So this is the bottom thread, and it goes inside this case. This is called the bobbin case. And when you're inserting this bobbin into the bobbin case, you first of all want to make sure that when you're looking at your bobbin, that the string is going clockwise, like this, while you're facing the opening. So make sure the string is clockwise, and it goes into your bobbin case, and you're going to pull it up, and it's going to go into this little groove here, and then you further want to pull it up into the groove until it's between these two teeth. And you'll notice when I am facing this and I pull, and the string, this bobbin moves clockwise, which means that when you turn it around and it's actually in the machine, it'll be going counterclockwise. And you just basically pop that in right here until you hear a click, like that. That's when you know you've successfully put the bobbin and the bobbin case into the machine. Now let's go to the top part of the machine. Okay, so this here is the top part of the machine. So right here is where your main spool of thread is going to go. So voila, main spool of thread. And of course, one of the best brands you can get, Gutermann. So when you put your spool of thread on, you want to make sure that you have it so that the thread is coming up underneath, like this. And then we have this little disc here that helps keep this from sliding off. And make sure you're doing spikes towards the inside, like that. And this spool has a label that you'll probably want to pull off. Okay. And basically you want to put it on there like enough so that you can still easily move this, but not so tight that it won't move like that. You just don't want it flying off when the machine starts going. So that is where you put your main spool of thread. We're not going to explore having two spools of thread, but this machine has capability, and the second one would go here. This is also where we usually put thread for winding the bobbin, which, if you remember, that is the bottom string. So let us talk about how to thread a machine. Alright, so when you're ready to start threading your machine, like you've learned how to turn it on, you've made sure it's plugged in, and you want to start practicing, you're going to want to take your string, and there is like a hook right back here, you're going to want to wrap your thread around this first back hook, like that. And then you're going to follow these arrows. So this arrow says I should go down this way first. And then there's another arrow right here that says come back up. And then there is supposed to be, there's a little like mechanism right here. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe I can adjust the camera accordingly. Okay, yeah, so you can see this thing now. So I made sure that I brought my thread up and into this part right here, and then it wants me, after wrapping it around that mechanism, to go back down. Okay. When I get down here, there's a hook right here. You're gonna wanna make sure that goes in the hook like that. And then there's a second little hook right here above the needle. You're gonna make sure it goes in there. And then, last but not least, to actually put the string in through the eye of the needle. So the needle has a little hole right here, and you're just gonna very carefully get it through there. Sometimes if the edge of your string is just too frayed, you can always get a pair of scissors and cut that off, and it will make inserting the string a little easier. Does not appear I have any scissors. Oh, I do. All right. Okay, let's try that again. Perfect, went right through. Pull it like that. Okay, we're not quite done though. Now we need to have this thread hook this bottom thread from the bobbin. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Alright, so there are two different ways that we can have this top thread hook on the bottom thread. So one way I like to do it that's fairly easy is to press this button right here that shows the needle and the needle eye, an up arrow and a down arrow. So just hold your top thread, press it once, press it again, and ta-da, they're both on top. So that's one way. The other way is to do it manually. So I'm going to show you how to do that on the side here. Alright, I'm going to take this out and pretend like I did not just thread it. So the other way is if you hold the top string and you grab this dial manually makes the machine run. So I kind of just, you know, do it till it's up like that, till it's done one full cycle, and pull the string through, and voila. Alright, let's talk about the buttons here. Okay, so I want to talk about these buttons now. So basically, we're not going to use necessarily all of these functions, but you at least need to know what they do. So this here is how fast your sewing machine will sew. I recommend maybe you push it just a tiny hair to the left of the middle. You don't want it to be too fast when you're first starting out. But if you notice that when you're sewing it is utterly too slow, you can push it up just a little bit. So this U-turn arrow here, that basically means instead of stitching forward, it'll go backwards. And if you just briefly press it for a few seconds, it will sew backwards, and then as soon as you release it, it'll go forwards again. But if you hold it too long, then it will permanently change to the backwards direction until you hold it again and it changes. And you'll hear a beep. So now you heard a beep, and it says it's going to sew backwards now. But if I don't want it to sew backwards, I just hold it again and it's gone. All right. So next, as we already learned, this button makes the needle go up or down. This is actually going to be very useful. I personally recommend making sure your needle stays down. What that means is while you're sewing, when you take your foot off the pedal to pause, the needle stays in the fabric. And that's going to be important when we need to turn corners, because otherwise, if the needle stays up when you take your foot off the pedal, you could lose your place, and then the sewing stitches could get a little messy. We're not really going to mess around with this button. This just has to do with how wide the zigzag is. This is needle placement, so we will actually use this sometimes for certain stitches. And if you watch, you can see my needle going from one direction to the other. And the screen will also show you that this white dot is where my needle currently is on this little scale. So now I've put my needle as far left as it can go, but generally you want to stay in the middle unless otherwise told. The default stitch length is 2.4, but generally we might change it a little bit now and then. I will let you know when we need to change the stitch length. Otherwise, just stick with 2.4. It goes all the way up to 5 and down to 0. And this has to do with how long the stitches are. So that's the correlating button. So I just changed it now to 2.3, down to 2.2, but let's put it back to default, 2.4. So that's either it'll go really long stitches or really short stitches. These here is how you change to different stitches. So this machine can do actually quite a lot of pre-programmed stitching and embroidery stitches and design stitches. We're not going to explore all of them, but we will explore several. I think it has at least 100 or 200 or something like that. So when you press it, it says number 1, and it shows you what the stitch is going to look like, and also even what type of foot you're going to need. This here is the foot, and we will change it out for different types of stitches and sewing procedures. So let's go to 2. So I pressed 2 and notice the screen changed. Now it shows me 2. It shows me what the stitch looks like. Yeah, and it even changed the stitch length for me. On 3, you know, it's like a straight line and a triangle. It shows me what number foot I need to use. These feet do have numbers on them, and we do have several of them. Not all of the feet, but several. Let's try doing like 10. So like obviously the numbers only go up to 9, but you can, like I said, there's a couple hundred in here. So 10 is this crazy one. What is 50? Is 50 in here? Do we have a 50? No. Do we have a 25? How about a 17? There we go. Or that's a crazy stitch. 14. Oh, it's kind of some kind of loop-de-loop thing. So we have a book here that shows you all the different stitching types, but again, we're not really going to use most of them because most of them are for decoration purposes. So that's pretty much what these buttons mean. And there's some other features here, but we're not going to really use those ones. And of course you can always... Okay, so like I mentioned, we have a lot of different types of feet, and should be easy to memorize because it kind of looks like a leg and a foot. But rule of thumb is number 1 is the default, and it should be on your machine. But we will need to change them for different types of sewing procedures and stitches. So when you're ready to change your foot, there should be this pedal bar back here, and you're going to push it back. And basically it's just going to then release your foot like this. And you'll notice there's a peg right here. And as you can see, here's this little, basically it's a hook. So this goes up into this little, I don't know, spiky thing goes into the foot here, and then this hook hooks right here onto the side and really holds it in place. So yeah, here's a wacky foot, number 5. It's got this plate in the middle. So you put that up on the peg, and then bring this hook right down. And now you can see it's in place. It's as easy as that. Unhook. Oh, this is a monster. We use this for making buttonholes. So yeah, again, this part goes on the peg right here. Hook comes down, and it is solid. And this is a pretty narrow foot, 4. We'll use that one too. Again, hook down, easy as that. So that is how you change the foot. Okay, and just for reference, I want to show you where the feet are in the classroom. So this here is the classroom, the studio, C112. And if we go over here to this cabinet, this top drawer is where we keep all the different kinds of feet. Please, please, please remember to keep the feet in the correct bin. So you can see they're all organized by different numbers. We got 35s, 2s, 3s, 31s. Yeah, so we got a lot of different ones. If you see any of them that are mixed up, just kindly put them back where they belong. Some of them do have mixed numbers, so you can only have so much space here.